Aloha. Welcome to the Walking in Aloha, Let's Talk Story podcast. We're so glad to have you here. Ekomo mai. Now here's our podcast host and award-winning author, Michelle.
Hello, everyone. I thank you, everyone, for coming to the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast, where we talk about faith, growth, and healing, creativity, and living the life that God created you to live. I'm your host, Michelle Ibala-Rosa Kawano, speaker, author, and creative coach. And I believe that every one of us has a story, a voice, and a purpose placed inside of us by the Creator. Here on this podcast, we explore real conversations with real people who are walking through adversity, leadership, transformation, and breakthrough so that others can see what's possible in their own lives. Today, I am so honored that I have Kelsey Dunbar and Marc Rogala. Did I say that correctly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. The co-founders of Suffer to Tougher and creators of the Strength Threshold Framework. Their work focuses on helping people understand pressure, expand their capacities, and build sustainable resilience instead of simply powering through. I know I do that a lot, so I'm glad that you're on. They are also authors of the books, like I said, Suffer to Tougher and You're Not Broken, which challenge the common belief that people are weak when they struggle. Instead, they teach that many people are simply operating below the level of pressure they've been trained and supported to handle. So today, we're going to talk story about resilience, leadership under pressure, and how people can intentionally expand their strength threshold so that they can grow without burning out. Kelsey and Marc, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you for having us, and we're great. Honored to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So I would love for you to just share a little bit about your journey, the life experience that led you to create Suffer to Tougher. And when did you realize the conversation around strength and resilience needed to change?
Yeah, so as far as my background, I've got 30 years as a fitness coach, and that kind of started from my own personal transformation where I definitely had a significant weight problem as a child. And as an adult going through that and having gone through a lot of bullying as a child and things like that, I knew that I needed to make a change. And I was powering through, kind of like you had described before, and just trying to get through each day, and even most times trying to find a reason to live. It was a very dark time for me, and instead of having someone who could have guided me through those challenging years and helped me through to not only get healthier but physically but mentally as well. So when I decided to become a fitness coach after finally learning enough to and implementing the tools that I needed to in order to lose the weight, I realized that I was missing the opportunity of working with someone that could have made that a much easier process for me. And that's why I became a fitness coach. But for many years, I had the whole idea of it, I think, backwards. I was at that time where I lost that weight, I was losing the weight so that I could feel better about myself. And a lot of the people that came to me, they kind of thought that similar way. And it was only actually through more recent conversations in the last, couple of years that I shifted more into a mindset approach where if we can work with people's mindset, we actually can help them change the things that are going on in their life and change daily habits and rituals where they will be able to implement fitness and as we call it, our mind body rhythm approach, where they can work through the problems and get to the other side a lot easier if they just focus on their mindset rather than I need to work out every day, and I need to have a very strict diet and things like that. And in conversations that Marc and I had about a year ago, we realized that even though we come from two different places in terms of the people that we work with and coach, me more people who are dealing with self-image issues, depression, anxiety, that type of stuff. And Marc, coming from the sobriety world and his life experiences, and he'll talk about that in a moment, we realized that a lot of the things that we were doing with the people we were coaching was actually the same, even though they were dealing with completely different problems. So that's how we come to the idea that we wanted to write a book together that talked about, no matter what you're going through, this is a great way to start out to build that foundation and to be able to try and get through it in a framework sort of way, rather than just trying to power through and just trying to grind.
That is so good. And Marc?
Yeah, with my story, it's pretty much an everyday America story, at least from the stories that I hear out there. But I started in the insurance industry at the age of 19, young. I was a young father, got married young as well, all at the age of 19. Was the sole income provider of a family of six. I had my wife. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. I had four children. I started on the sales side, eventually went to the management side in a leadership role with the insurance company I was working for. And as I said, dealing with that, it was pretty stressful. I really didn't have any work-life balance. I really wasn't doing anything to drive myself, from a health perspective. I had undiagnosed mental health. My mental health diagnosis is PTSD from some early childhood trauma, general anxiety disorder. I did suffer from panic attacks, specifically when I would speak publicly or hold meetings in the insurance industry. And I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. But the thing about it is I never really consulted a therapist or got any help in regards to the underlying mental health until I was in the weeds of my addictions. I did stay away from alcohol in my younger days because I did have some alcoholism in my family that I grew up with. But I did find myself drinking a little too much as I started to get older, trying to cope with the different stress and anxieties of life. And as I said, I really didn't have any work-life balance, and my diet was very poor. Wasn't doing anything on the physical fitness side, really wasn't putting healthy foods in my body, gained a lot of weight, developed a neck and back issue, was introduced to prescription pain pills as a result of the neck and back issue. And that's really when my addictions took off. At the end, I was a fentanyl addict. I lost my marriage of 25 years, lost my relationship with my kids, I lost that well-paying job in the insurance industry, multiple visits to treatment, car accident, where I woke up on a ventilator, multiple overdoses. I mean, I had a day where I overdosed twice on the same day. And then, eventually found myself in a hospital, heard a gentleman speak that gave me some hope and inspiration. He convinced me to go to treatment the last time, and he hit me with a couple of anecdotes, during a personal conversation that I had with him after his presentation. And that led to my sobriety and my recovery. Because that gentleman was so inspiring to me, he was a heroin addict from the south side of Chicago and shared his journey. He really changed my life in 45 minutes of the way I viewed things. I decided that I wanted to do some of the work that he did and kind of get back to the community. So I started speaking at hospitals and started getting really active in organizations that educate the general public on mental health. And once I started getting active in those organizations, and really getting open, honest, and transparent on social media, it was like the floodgates opened up. I couldn't begin to believe how many people struggle with anxiety, depression, and most of the time it's undiagnosed, and various addictions. Got reacquainted with Kelsey because I knew him in high school, but I really didn't know him in high school. We weren't friends in high school. I was reacquainted with him through a mutual friend that I was helping on the sobriety side. We just started talking, and we just had this aha moment because, like, literally everything that he works with his clients that struggle with underlying mental health and eating issues is really everything that I preach with individuals that I work with that have underlying mental health and struggle with alcohol or substance issues. So we decided to write this book as a resource for these individuals, as a self-help, to kind of give them a roadmap, if you will, to get their life a lot healthier, get their life back on track, and to be able to thrive, for the rest of their life.
Wow, that is incredible. Just being on with both of you, I can actually say that I could talk to each of you in my life because I was 225 pounds before, and it took that decision, right? You have to make that decision that no one is force feeding me, right? No one is force feeding me. I am doing this to myself. And so I went from 225 to 135. Don't look at me now because I know I gained some weight back. In that time, I was so bad. I drank so much, like, like before when I was having all those health issues, like I had health issues, I had all kinds of things happening. And the way that I handled it was drinking, right? And so I would constantly be drinking. It got so bad. It was to that point where I was carrying around a flask, those little metal flasks. And at first I thought it was cool, right? And it was like, no, it's not cool. It's not cool that you need a drink in the middle of like a baseball game at the park, you know, things like that. So those things I had to realize and I had to recognize in myself that I was like, oh my gosh, I need to make these changes. And so, yeah, been sober for years now. And a lot of people, they talk about the heavy illicit drugs. I have a brain aneurysm now, right? I have a brain aneurysm. It wasn't from that. It was from an accident. But the one thing the doctor says was don't do like meth, don't do whatever, all these illicit drugs, because that could trigger the growth and expansion of the aneurysm. And I'm like, thank God. No, I don't. I don't do anything like that, But yeah, to hear both of your stories, I'm like, that is really an amazing place to come from. And because you have come from that place, I know that you're able to help a lot of people. So I've sent some questions, and the one thing that ties all of my guests together is called the ALOHA Always Framework. And it is the affirmations and actions, leadership and love, overcoming obstacles, health and healing, and acute awareness. And that is what God walked me through. When I wrote my book, before I wrote my book, I was like, so many people was telling me that people need to hear your story. You need to write this book. And I just didn't want it to be a whole rehash of all the bad things that I went through. I didn't want it to be, like I'm reliving it, to say the least, right? And I was like, can't do this. I just felt like I can't do this. And so I prayed and I asked God, Lord, if you need me to write this book, you need to help me because I just don't know how. And he said, I gave you everything in ALOHA. And I was like, I was born and raised here in Hawaii, and I know what ALOHA is, and I didn't understand how that applied. But when I started writing everything I went through, it was in ALOHA. It was in those steps that I took to get from A to, where I am right now, where I can actually help people with what I do and with what I went through. And that's one thing people don't understand. You really truly help people through the things you've already been through. Yeah. And
For
then
sure.
you're able to walk them through that. So I want to start with A. And the first A in ALOHA is affirmations and actions. What mindset shift do people need to make to move from believing that they were weak to realizing they simply need to expand their capacity?
Yeah. So I think the biggest shift is getting, out of the mindset that something's wrong with you.
Mhm.
'Cause most people aren't weak, they're just overwhelmed. I mean, that's something that's straight out of our book. They've taken more time than they've taken on more in their life that they can handle. And then they kind of take it personally when they fail, which we don't even like that word. I mean, anything that normally people would associate with that word, we generally like to say it's a setback, because to us, the word fail means to give up. And as long as you're trying to find a way through it, you're not failing. Just sometimes you have to kind of stop, reassess where you're at, and like own it, and just be like, what is going to be the smallest step that I can take forward, so at least I'm not right here anymore. So it's just trying to take a small step forward. And, it was, we say in our book, progress over perfection. And, but that's the problem, is that, people just try and do too much at one time, I think. And it just gets overwhelming, where, they just need to wrap their head around the fact that I'm going to try and do better. And anything that I do better today is better than it was yesterday. And if they wake up every day just trying to be, as they say, the 1% better, I think they're already kind of on a road to recovery and that supported strength.
Good. That is so true. You know, like I said, I gained now 50 pounds back. And when I hit that 50-pound mark, I was like, my gosh, like I know that I lost a lot, but to gain 50 pounds back is huge, right? And this has been not like automatic or not like real quick. It was over time. And I know that I had things like I had a hip replacement that went wrong, and now I have this brain aneurysm. But I went to the gym just last night, and to see me do leg presses, and it's like not even with weights, I mean, those kind of things. I'm like, at first, yes, but that feeling where you're like, and it's a bit of a disappointment. I had to admit that it was a bit of a disappointment, but I had to remind myself that we all have to start somewhere, right? We all have to start somewhere. And if you're starting over, if you're resetting, then so be it. But like you said, you're not failing, you're still trying. And that is the main thing, is that you continue on instead of feeling like I have nowhere to go and stop. Because when you stop, that's when you truly fail.
A big believer in what I call brain set resets, or reshaping the mind. So, like, if I was talking to you, I mean, one, we don't have to lose 90 pounds. You're looking to lose 50 pounds or maybe a little less than that, right? But you got to remind yourself of what you've dealt with. I mean, you dealt with the hip replacement and you dealt with the brain aneurysm. Okay. I think sometimes we look at the person in the mirror and we're like our own worst critic, and we don't give each other grace. We don't give ourselves grace. But if you were talking to like a friend that went through those same challenges and put on 50 pounds, how would you talk to them? You'd be all motivational. You can do this again. Well, guess what? You're not talking to anybody more than you're talking to the person in the mirror, and it's all up here.
Mhm.
You have to control those thoughts. You have to do those brain set resets, and you have to look at the glass half full versus half empty. And that's the one thing that I preach, and that's the one thing that I've learned in my recovery.
I
Yeah.
love it. Brain set reset.
Comparisons are a trap. Comparisons are the biggest trap. And we think that, it's bad enough that we compare ourselves to other people. Of course, because of social media, it's never been worse as far as that goes, because number one, you might be comparing yourself to a celebrity that has a nutritionist, they've got a trainer, so they've got all the advantages anyway. But you also then compare yourself to other, let's say, friends or people on social media, where they're only telling you the best things that are happening in your life, not the worst. So it's not even a fair comparison either. But the thing that people do more than they realize is comparing themselves to themselves, which is what you were doing. And you were like, but I was this lighter weight, and I know that, I let myself gain this weight. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday or a week ago or a year ago. You're starting from where you are right now. That's all you can worry about. You can't change the past. You have to just start with today and where you are right now. Comparing yourself to even yourself, who you used to be, doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, that is so true. So true.
It's like that old saying, yesterday's history, tomorrow's mystery, today's a gift. That's why they call it the present. You just have to win the day.
Beautiful. Yeah, that is so good. I actually came home and I did a little recording, and I actually was saying how disappointed I was seeing the weight that I was doing legs. So, and I'm like, no, because I need to stay here to move forward. I need to stay consistent to move forward. If I continue to be like, oh, I can't do it, and then go backwards, I'm going to end up here where I'm hitting the gym again, starting all over. If I keep moving back, it's like 2 steps forward. What is that? 2 steps forward. I don't even know the saying anymore. But I was like, no, this is where I am right now, but I'm never just going to be stuck here as long as I stay consistent. That's one thing that people need to realize is that everyone starts somewhere. And if you're starting over, that is your somewhere. That is your point of continuing on. It's when you go backwards, then you're going to end up back there again. And I'll still be doing 20 pounds on the legs. It's okay. Especially as I'm talking to people like you and being able to share. I feel like, like you said about social media, and it's like the highlight reel. People only tell you the highlight reel. No, I will tell you my hard times, because if I don't, everybody thinks that everything's been perfect forever. If they see the struggle and they see how real you are and the authentic self, that is when they can go, hey, I can learn from you. I can learn from you. I can take what you're saying because you're not out of my league. Sometimes when people feel like they're out of your league, you don't want to have them help you. So when I first started in the gym, I was there, and the owner of the gym, she passed away, but she was a bodybuilder. And so she would come and she would be like, oh, you would need some help. And I was thinking, no, I don't, because I always thought like, I'm never going to get to where you are right now. No, I need help from that person over there, because it just seemed like too much, too much. And then she said something. I was working out, and after that, she didn't bother me at all. She let me go. She let me do my thing, right? And she told me, I've been watching you work out, and you're doing so well by yourself, but I can help you out. I was thinking, it's so nice. You were watching me, and she's like fit to a T, right? I mean, she's like up there. And I was like, oh my gosh, you were watching me. And that actually made me feel really good. And so she did help me out a lot. And that was so good. I was so sad when she passed away. It was during a bodybuilding tournament. And yeah, but I still love her.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Michelle. I mean, you bring up a point here, and I do want to reiterate this. There seems to be this preconceived notion out there, and I was no different, that asking
Mhm.
for help is a sign of weakness. And when we talk to people, when we do public presentations, we say asking for help is absolutely not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. And I think that's important to understand. I think that's important for your audience to understand as well.
That is so true. That is so true. So, what practical actions can someone begin taking when they recognize that they have been surviving rather than building real strength?
Well, I mean, as I kind of said it before, I mean, just trying to do everything all at once. I mean, it's, or just at least allowing yourself to get overwhelmed. I mean, it's good to, you know, try and move your diet forward. It's good to try to do better nutrition. It's good to, just even recognize that you have something that you want to work on and try and put a plan into action. But what I see more often than not, and of course, this is no surprise to you guys, everyone with their New Year's resolutions, everyone's got this plan that they're going to lose all this weight and they're going to start January 1st, and they've got this whole thing mapped out. And then the reason why they have, I think it's the first Friday in February that they call Quitting Friday, is because most people by that particular Friday have quit their New Year's resolution because they were trying to do too much and got overwhelmed. So, I mean, that's definitely when you're barely surviving, you're certainly not thriving. So you really just have to have a practical approach of how can I move mind, body, rhythm forward, just 1 inch at a time so I don't set myself up to fail.
So good. That is so good.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is you just got to take the first step, and you can't climb a mountain without taking the first step, right? And like with me, from my perspective, I mean, I had to change a lot, because, I had that major addiction. I was dealing with that mental health crisis and so forth, but my body was so beat up, from the alcohol and the opiates. So it's like, my life back then was just, what can I change based off what I'm dealing with? And early on, I mean, it was no gym. It was not lifting weights. It was literally just trying to get out of bed and go for a walk. And then all of a sudden the walk started getting long enough. So let me download a pedometer on my phone and start tracking my steps. Only to find out that the pedometer was there all along. I just never used it. Right. And as far as like dietary changes, like my diet reeked of depression. I mean, everything I was putting in my body was depleting my serotonin and dopamine levels. I just didn't know. It was a lack of education there. So, like, what can I do? First thing I did was cut pap out of my diet. I mean, that was really, really, really simple. Once you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, now I'm walking on a regular basis and I cut pap out of my diet, what other change do I want to make? And you just build on the momentum. Like Kelsey said, progress over perfection. And all we're comparing you to is the person that you were in the mirror yesterday. I don't care if we just move it by 0.01%. As long as it's going in the right direction, that's all we're focused on.
That is so good, and it's that leading yourself, right? Because you have to be able to lead yourself out of those things. And during my domestic violence thing, and I was in there and I felt like I was so stuck in the silence of domestic violence. I was protecting other people and forgetting about myself, you know, other people, because here in Hawaii, it's expensive. And so family lives with family. And so when I was going through that, no one knew because he was a very good narcissist. He was a very good liar, to say the least, right? So he would do all these things when no one was around and then make it seem like I had the problem. But it's like if I was beat up, I didn't want people to see. So I would stay in the room. And then he would say, oh, because she's sick, she's not well, or, something else. And I would hear that and I'm like, but I would stay and I would protect other people because I didn't want them to like see me and feel like whatever, or lose the roof over their head because he got so upset. And now we're all out on the street, that kind of thing. So I had to tell myself, I need to love myself enough to lead me out of here. And I had to actually be the one to be like, I gotta go and I pray you guys will be okay because I couldn't stay. And so it was leading myself out. And like you said, recognizing those things and being like, no, my diet is crazy, poisoning myself. When I lost all that weight, I was the one telling myself, no one's force feeding me. I'm eating this stuff on my own. But you have to be to that point where you're okay to lead yourself. And that's the leadership and love in the Aloha. So leadership often begins with how we lead ourselves under pressure. Like when I was saying, that was a lot of pressure to leave the domestic violence situation that I was in, but it was the best thing, right? It was the best thing. So how does self-leadership play a role in developing resilience and supported strength?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that, self-leadership is, more has to do with how you show up for yourself when things aren't ideal. So, when you have a plan and you're able to execute the plan, the problem is, let's say, you're getting off work late. All right. And you come home and you didn't have time to, cook a proper dinner and you're already late and you're like, oh, I got to eat something. That's when we generally turn to the things that we shouldn't be turning to, like for food, or, how am I going to get my workout in? I was meaning to work out this evening, but I got off work late. So how am I going to fit that in now? I guess I'm just going to have to miss it today. Whereas if you do things like prepping your meals, you do things like working out in the morning first thing, so that way you can't blow it off later. You can't let your day take over. So, self-leadership is more about an awareness and a practical approach of making sure that, the things that generally would derail you won't, but it really takes a foundation and a plan. And I know Marc in the work he does, talks about this a lot. So I'll put that in your hands, Marc.
Well, it's just, I look back at my life. I mean, there was always a reason why I couldn't do certain things. I was trying to feed my family. I was trying to go to my son's baseball tournament, to my daughter's softball tournament. Had, 25 sales representatives that I was managing that had to hit certain numbers to hit their quota, so they weren't getting a cut in pay. And I was worried about them and their wives and their kids and so forth. So I was putting everybody else's needs above mine. And in the meantime, I'm getting deeper and deeper and deeper into a mental health crisis, and I'm getting deeper and deeper into an addiction crisis as well. And the way I live my life right now is the complete opposite of that. And when I work with individuals, I tell them the one area it is absolutely 100% okay to be selfish in is when it comes to your health. And when I say your health, we're talking mental, physical, and spiritual. What order is your business? But as long as you're tackling that on a daily basis, you're going to become the best version of yourself. And by becoming the best version of yourself, guess what? You're going to be a better spouse or partner. You're going to be a better parent, and you're going to be a better leader in the workplace, not just a manager, but a leader in the workplace where people will aspire to and want to make maybe changes in their personal life because they see what you have done, okay, to make them a better all-around person and better all-around parent and spouse as well. But that is completely different than how I lived my life before. That was kind of like an aha moment that I got in recovery. And that's the one thing that I preach when I'm working like with patients at a behavioral health place that I work at on a daily basis during the week, or if I'm speaking at an organization or Kelsey and I are doing a presentation, I really drive home that point quite a bit.
That is so good. That is just so good. So, can you tell me what role does support and connection play when someone is trying to grow stronger without burning out? Because I know that happens a lot to people. They try and they're trying to do those things, but then they burn out.
It's just about starting things at a very slow state. I mean, just a couple of little things. I mean, like Marc talked about, his walking, then his quitting soda. And so it's just building incrementally, because when it comes to like powering through stuff, it doesn't respect limits. You can push for a while, and that's as we talk about like the grind. I mean, or it's just you have strength, but it's survival strength. It's not supported strength, and that's what we're trying to get to. But it's not going to happen all at once, and the more you try and force that to happen, I mean, that's when it's going to tear you apart, and you're going to burn out.
And the other thing too is like what we're what we're doing with Suffer to Tougher is we're creating a community of like-minded individuals, that have these daily rituals in place that are focusing on their mental, physical, and spiritual health to become a better all-around person. So, with that community, you're also getting structure and support there and accountability as well. You might have individuals going through a similar situation at home that you might be able to lean on and talk to them and say, well, how the heck do you do all this and fit this into your day? I'm having a hard time or I'm maybe losing my edge a little bit, just to get them to stay focused and continue to have that drive, because that's the biggest thing is, you want to continue to get better every day. Uh, I am a believer of satisfaction is the first step to failure, and that complacency kills, specifically in the recovery world. You see somebody get a little complacent and they stop doing basic things like maybe going to a support group meeting like AA or Smart Recovery or what have you. And then all of a sudden you find out that, they fell off the wagon and they had a little bit of a setback, and now they got to go back to basics and get them back sober and start doing the little things all over again. The goal is for it to become a lifestyle to the point where you don't even think you're doing anything special on a daily basis. It's just the way you live your life. That's where I'm at right now. But the thing about it is again, that becomes infectious, with people that may or may not even struggle with mental health or alcohol or substances. We've had people that don't have any mental health diagnosis or any addictive tendencies, but they got other issues going on like diabetes, and they've completely transformed their life by applying the principles in the book, losing weight. And they went from being told they're going to be potential amputee in the next 5 years to now they're getting off of all diabetes medications because of all the changes that they're making because they're part of this community. So really the book even though it was written from like a mental health or recovery perspective, I would consider the book self-help. It really is applicable to anybody that wants to improve their daily lifestyle.
Yeah, that is so good. And how Kelsey just reminded me about how you said giving up like things, first the pop, those small incremental steps. That is what really helps people to move forward. It's when you try to do it all and then it's too much. Like the person who thinks that they can go to the gym and start lifting the heaviest weights they can, and then they're like in pain and they don't go to the gym for 2 months. You can't just do that. You can't like go to the gym once and then skip it for a week or 2 weeks and you're like, I'm going back to the gym and you call it good. No, no, you're not. That's not good, you know? But it's because they believe that they're just pushing it too far.
Yeah, I mean, and there's also an educational component there too. Like, why are we walking early on and getting our body moving? Well, you got the whole endorphin effect. Start talking about brain chemistry. Or Mark, why did you cut Diet Pepsi out of your diet? Well, that aspartame in Diet Pepsi wreaks havoc on your serotonin. So if I already got a diagnosis of major depressive disorder, why would I put something in my body that's going to deplete my serotonin levels even more and lead me more to a depressed state? So shameless plug here, but we got a whole nutrition guide on our website that kind of gets into some of this stuff. And it's so important. I mean, I'm a big believer that you have to eat your food as medicine, not for pleasure. I really do believe that.
Yeah, that is important. I remember when I first started doing like meal planning and all of that, and you actually become a person of reading labels. And I never used to do that before, but it's in that overcoming those things that we've done before to move us forward. So actually the O in Aloha is overcoming obstacles. So many people have been taught to just simply power through. Why does that approach eventually fail?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of already touched on it before. It's just, maybe not in the Aloha, you know, framework, but yeah, but it's just the obstacles happen because we're not set up properly to deal with them. So I mean, even just in the meal prep and label reading, I mean, you might go a place where you don't have a label to read, but if you think to yourself, okay, so what are the very basics of nutrition? All right, so I should have some fruits or vegetables are good for me, right? Because they've got all of the vitamins and minerals. Okay, I know I'm supposed to have that. Okay, cool. So I'm going to start with some fruits or vegetables. Okay, so you eat those. Okay, that starts filling you up, right? And you know that you're supposed to have them, so you start with that. Then you know that your body needs protein for recovery and for muscle building. Okay, so we'll have some protein. All right, so whatever meat source or obviously there's replacement protein source, whether it's tofu or if you're a vegetarian or whatever. So there are protein sources you can get. Then, after you eat those two things, you're mostly full. And then you might have some starchy carbohydrates. When we go to restaurants, they want to fill us up with bread, right? Here's your basket of bread. You go to a nice restaurant, a steakhouse, they give you this bread. That's the last thing you should be eating first. But as far as they're concerned, they want you to get filled up on something that's cheap for them to serve you. But honestly, if you save that for last, or say your potatoes, or say your pasta, you save that for last, you might not feel like you need to eat it at all. But even if you do, you're like, after a bite or two, you're like, okay, that tasted good and everything, but I'm really feeling full. And then I tell people another little tidbit is if you feel like you need to have a dessert, like you were that person that has a dessert every night, like a couple hours after dinner, force yourself to eat it with dinner. Okay. Do we see what's going to happen there? They're so full from their dinner that they're like, either I don't have room for dessert or I only have room for a bite of dessert, where I'm like, okay, I got the taste, I got the craving, I got that all out of my system, but now I'm going to stop eating a couple hours before bed and force myself to go to bed after a couple hours after I've ate, which of course is going to help you sleep better as well. So sometimes it's just trying to use a common sense approach, rather than trying to, bog yourself down with counting calories, counting macros, just saying, what is it that my body, like Mark said, like medicine, what is my body telling me that I need? And when I feel like I've gotten what I need, why do I need to keep eating? I don't need, I want. Okay. If you give yourself enough of what you need, you'll find that you'll have less want.
Good. That is just so good. I love it.
And just to say something about overcoming obstacles, I always give this quote. Kelsey's probably heard it several hundred times. She's probably going to roll his eyes right now. The Dalai Lama has a beautiful quote.
No, love this.
And the quote goes something like this: pain in life is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And, you're
That is,
talking to a guy here that suffered for a long time. With undiagnosed mental health, didn't understand the dietary component, the role of exercise. Obviously, I'm a drug addict and alcoholic living a life of recovery right now. But, I guess throw another one out there too, the difference between a cow and a bull. I was a cow for a long time. When the storms of life came in, I'd run away from the storm. And how did I run away from the storm? Self-medication. But the problem is that storm eventually catches up. And even though I'm running away from it, my time in the storm is going to be longer. And then the storm eventually surpasses me, but I got to deal with all that chaos because of some of those decisions. You apply the principles in the book, you're going to become a buffalo. Buffalo senses a storm coming on. They're running to the storm. They're ready to tackle it head on. And by doing that, yeah, they're going to hit the storms of life, but the time in the storm is going to be less because they have these rituals in place and these disciplines in place already intact that's going to keep them grounded. So they're able to plow through that in a much healthier way. Because you're going to go through pain in life. I mean,
yeah.
you're gonna lose relatives, unfortunately. You're gonna have strained relationships. You're gonna go through breakups. I mean, a divorce rate in this country is what, 51 or 52%. Financial stress that's going on out there right now with the current economic conditions. I mean, these are all the things that I hear about when I go speak at the psychiatric hospitals. I mean, there's people dealing with a lot right now. It's like, how do we handle these things in a healthy way? It's ritual focused. It's mind body rhythm. It's really the things that we laid out in the book.
So good. That's just so good. So how can adversity become capacity building rather than identity defining?
I think that's just a mindset approach where it's like, the things that Marc and I have gone through and the things that you have gone through. I mean, would we all
Yeah.
agree that we're stronger because of them? Because we didn't let them take over? Because we apply what we learned. And Marc and I say this all the time, that honestly, our biggest learning experiences are also our greatest adversities. So we learn from what we get through. And then the next time we're faced with that type of a problem, it's like, oh, well, we've been here before and we know what it took to get through it then. It was a lot harder because we didn't really know, but now we know, and it's something that we're capable and prepared to deal with.
So good. Yeah, that is so true. The H in aloha is, oh, Mark, did you want to say something?
Well, no, I was just gonna say. I mean, I look at myself now, like even like the pre-addiction Mark. Honestly, I look at the version that I am right now, and I'm probably the most proud of the individual in the mirror that I've ever been in my life. I mean, I've caused obviously a lot of destruction because of past poor decisions. I get that. I understand that, but I'm the healthiest I've been physically, mentally, spiritually, a much more empathetic person, and I find myself really enjoying helping others. Your fellow brothers and sisters, pick them up, brush them off, and let's get them back to becoming functional members of society. And it's been very rewarding. So, I guess through all this, I guess I've been redirected by my. I mean, the timing couldn't have been more impeccable. I mean, all my addictions were before COVID. I got sober during COVID. It was almost like a preparation for this post-COVID world that we live in right now. And I found my true purpose and passion in life, which is helping others cope with life and the stresses of life in a much healthier way.
That is so, so helpful. That's one thing that people need to realize is that, when we go through things, like I mentioned before, you become that person that can help someone else out because you now have that empathy, because you have that true understanding. You're not someone who's just talking off the cuff. You're not talking from a textbook. You're talking from real
Yeah,
life experiences,
yeah.
and that is, to me, that is the most powerful way to help people. So I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you guys are doing what you're doing. That is incredible. So that's the health and healing. How does emotional regulation and awareness help people increase their strength threshold?
So, I mean, as I said before, I had really a backwards approach to this for a very long time. It took me a long time to realize this, and as we talk about, the being comfortable admitting our faults, our flaws, the things that we had to learn from. I mean, I've been a fitness coach for 30 years. I can't tell you that there's a heck of a lot more of them that I didn't know this than I did, and that is just the starting from the mental side of things first, taking care of yourself. I mean, like Marc said earlier, the most important thing that, or I should say, the one thing that you can be the most selfish about and have every justification in the world for is taking care of you, taking care of your health, both, mental and physical. And when you do that, you have a full cup to be able to pour into others. If you don't have that full cup, then you can't give of yourself and actually have people be able to receive anything good. So you have to fill your own cup first. So you have to take care of home base. You have a better mindset. You're feeling better emotionally, and it allows you to do more and to feel better about where you're coming from. And it just prepares you for life, and it helps you heal from things that you're dealing with. It just all starts with you being able to take care of your health, both mental and physical.
So good. Yeah. Pastor Andrew Moment has a book called Leader Fit. And I love the way that he puts it out there where how can you lead or how can you answer the call of God if you're not fit yourself, right? Because if you expect to do something for someone and you want to serve, how can you serve from a place where you're not well? So you need to have that, like you said, the physical, mental, spiritual health, right? And so the health and healing for me came at that point where I was, I escaped. Actually, I had to escape. When people hear the word escape, no, I really had to escape because I was in a situation where it was so dangerous that I was seeing a psychologist and she told me that I need to see you out, not dead. And when she said that, I was like, I didn't realize if I decided to back up and stop seeing her and like ended up stuck in that relationship, I could be dead. And that's what she was saying. Because at that point, I lost my insurance and I was telling her I can't see you anymore. And she said, no, I'm going to do it pro bono because I need to see you out, not dead. And I was like, so I literally had to escape. I started making plans to move to the mainland. I was here in Hawaii. He's here in Hawaii. But I was mailing things in those little, boxes that I would just stuff it because it's the one that the weight doesn't matter in those boxes. So I would just stuff those boxes and I would mail those boxes to my daughter. And then my friend, she was helping me out. She was like, she made a bank account for me under her name, all this stuff. And it was just the craziest thing. It could be a movie, but I had to escape. Like when I told him I'm going to go because my daughter was giving birth, he didn't know that I had everything set up to never come back, never come back to him. And as soon as I left, that's when I was able to contact all the family members that was living in the house. And I told them what was happening and they never knew. They never knew anything, so it's that mental health that I had to take. It's that healing that took me time. It wasn't instant. And going to, taking care of myself. Because it was in that I'd realized that when I started losing the weight, when I started to do all of those things that took care of me, I actually not only felt better, but I moved better. My body didn't ache the way that it did. All the stuff changed. I got off of the medication that I was on. So people don't realize how huge it is when you start taking that turn to look at your health. All of the other things change too. It's not just looking good. It's not just the outward appearance, but it truly is what happens inside, right? Because sometimes people break down not because they're weak, but because they're carrying so much, carrying so much. And I felt like that's what I was doing. I was trying to carry so much, but that's where the health and healing came from. What signs indicate someone is operating beyond their capacity and needs restoration or that structural support that you give?
You didn't get to chime in on the last one, Marc, so I'll let you have that one.
I mean, obviously, if there's forms of self-medication, and the thing is with the self-medication, I think this is really important to understand. We're not talking necessarily about drugs or substances and alcohol. It could be eating, it could be shopping, it could be hoarding, it could be sexual, it could be video gaming, it could be scrolling, watching Netflix for 10 hours at a time and not doing anything productive. Okay. You're just trying to numb out. You're just trying to get away from the chaos in your life. That's going to be the first. I mean, that's the obvious, right? Racing thoughts, having problems sleeping at night, low self-worth, low self-esteem, not feeling really comfortable with the person in the mirror, maybe hate the person in the mirror, maybe look at the person in the mirror with a little disgusting feeling. I mean, really, all the above. And there's a lot of, I'm saying this, and I'm quite certain there's a lot of people in the audience who be like, "Well, I do this, or I do that, or I feel this way." This is common. I really can't even remember a conversation I've had in the last 3 weeks with somebody that found out what I do that did not share something going on in their life. I mean, this is everyday America. I guess the only difference is because it's considered a sensitive subject matter. People got the shame and guilt. They maybe think it's defective to feel this way or what have you. I guess the only difference is that Kelsey and I and the individuals that we work with, we're trying to bring this to the mainstream. I mean, this should be conversations we're having at the dinner table with our children. I mean, this is everyday life. We just want to normalize these conversations. I think by normalizing these conversations, if people get off their chest what they're feeling on the inside, that in itself is healing. I believe that secrets or things that we feel on the inside, if we're not able to vocalize them, are like cancers growing inside of us. And when that cancer is growing inside of us, it's going to lead to some other habits that a lot of times could be destructive, as what I discussed earlier, alcohol, substances, shopping. I mean, I see it all. I've seen people lose their homes because of gambling. I've seen people have multiple bankruptcies because of online shopping. Obviously, I see the alcohol and substance side. I mean, heck, I don't know what the number is, but probably somewhere between 30 and 40 people just in my inner circle, not even with the work that I do, that's gone because of alcoholism and substance use, or God forbid, suicide. I mean, as far as the circle that I ran with, as far as I know, there's only two people alive, and the one person's doing time in jail. I'm the only one that's alive, that's out, and I'm doing the work that I'm doing. And I often ask myself, why am I even still alive? Because I should be dead 100 times over. And the only thing that I can put my finger at is the man above and God. And I really believe I was kept here on this earth to do the work that we're doing. I just feel it in my soul. I feel it in my heart. And that's why we just want to normalize these conversations and be a source of healing for individuals that are going through a tough time.
Yeah, and I just want to add also that, as far as signs, I mean, sometimes it's like people that disengage. I mean, I used to tell people that, when I was thinking about, suicide on a daily basis, which was a lot of my childhood, almost in my entire high school, I would wake up every day and contemplate it. And, sometimes I would be lashing out with anger, other times I'd be sad. But the thing that scared me the most were the days where I was numb. I didn't feel like anything because I was so far checked out that I didn't really have any feeling. It was just like I was just ready. That's scary. So when you feel like people start to pull away from you a little bit and they don't really want to talk, and you get too many conversations in a row that people go, I'm fine. I mean, it's not great, but nothing I really feel like talking about. Like, those are the conversations where we need to say, okay, well, just so you know, I care about you. I'm here for you. You can tell me anything. There's nothing wrong with saying I had a bad day and this is why. And for people who think that, you don't want to hear that conversation, and tell them you do want to hear that, because you're important to them, and so is that conversation. So just trying to kind of keep some dialogue going. But when people seem like they're pulling themselves back, I mean, that's generally a pretty good sign. But again, that goes to what Marc was saying as far as eliminating the stigma around mental health. I mean, I've kind of started reframing the mental health coach into a mental resilience coach, because I think to a lot of people that sounds better. Because when people say that they struggle with mental health, again, like Marc said, people feel like there must be something defective with them. I challenge anybody to read our book, Suffer to Tougher, and not find something in it that they can benefit from and say, okay, I do resonate with this, because good luck. And honestly, anybody who said, I bought your book, I read it, it didn't apply to me at all, I'd like my money back, I will take out my credit card and I'll give it back to them. I'm saying that right now. I don't care how many people listen to this podcast, how many people want to buy the book, read it, and say, I didn't find anything in there that was useful. Great, I'll give you your money back. Okay. It's not going to happen. Just like in the book that we wrote, You're Not Broken, which was actually geared towards children. I just want to kind of talk about that for a second. I've had people that I've offered the book to, and they say, oh, my kids are fine. Like, they don't need that. I'm like, there are 34 chapters in that book, and each one is dealing with a different subject matter that can help kids through everything that a kid could possibly go through that we could think of. And if you're going to try and tell me that your kids are not going to resonate with something in that book, I would either challenge that maybe you don't know them as well as you think you do, or they're absolutely an anomaly. Because I know most of those chapters applied to me in my childhood. And I have people all the time that read the book that come back to me and go, man, I wish there was something like this when I was a kid. And that's exactly why we wrote that book, is because after people read Suffer to Tougher, we kept on getting people over and over again at our presentations that would ask the same question. When are you guys going to come out with a book for kids that is applicable to them specifically? And it was, quote unquote, by popular demand, that I'm like, Marc, we talked about doing this like a year from now. We can't wait. This book is too needed not to. And we got to work.
Yeah, if I could just paint a little picture, we're doing a book signing in the suburbs of Chicago, and we're paired with the children's book. So there was a bunch of moms there with their little kids. So we got some sensitive subject matter we talk about. So we kind of like talked at a very high level, 'cause, I mean, it was a weird crowd because you had half the people there for us and you had half the people, with little kids there. But there was a group of school teachers from the western suburbs of Chicago that were there. And the one lady walked up to us and, she pretty much had, you could see she had a little tear in her eye. And she said, I just want to thank you so much for bringing the subject matter to the table. She goes, this was last July. She goes, I lost my sister to suicide in January of this year. She was struggling with alcoholism and depression. And Kelsey and I kind of like looked at each other, were just aghast, that this lady took the time to share something so sensitive and came up to us privately. And then another lady came up and they were all like school teachers, like, you really need to do this for the younger individuals. We're seeing so much out there right now. And then I actually was doing some volunteer work at a crisis department in the far western suburbs of Chicago, totally state funded. It's open 24/7, 365. It opened up in September of last year. And this was on the heels of our book signing in July. I'm pretty in tune as far as what's going on out there with the mental health and the addiction crisis, like with adults, because I speak at the hospitals and that. But like I told Kelsey, I was calling them up, leaving my shifts, and I'm like, you're not going to believe this. I mean, we're seeing kids 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old coming in self-harm, suicidal ideations. I mean, it was scary and it was shocking. And that's when Kelsey's like, we need to make this a priority or make it a priority now. And the book came out right around, I think it came out on New Year's Eve or December 30th, right before turn of the year. The weird
That
part
is
about it is we write Suffer to Tougher. Okay. And then we had a lot of people buy the book for their kids, but they read the book for their kids and they're calling us up literally crying, saying, I wish I had this book when I was younger, or it makes sense now. It's allowing me to process everything and accept what happened. So maybe I can heal, because healing starts with radical acceptance, right? It just portrayed a picture of what childhood trauma could look like. And just like with me, like when I was diagnosed with PTSD, I told the therapist there's no way I could be diagnosed with PTSD. I didn't serve in the military. I had no idea. I thought it was a military thing. And most people, when I say that, they kind of laugh because they think it's a military thing too. It's not. And everybody processes trauma differently.
Yeah, I was in the Army, civilian side of the Army, but I thought PTSD was just military, Army, like things like that. And that's what I related it to until I was told that through what I went through, you know, and I'm
It was.
like, yeah. So to hear that and to be like, no, it's not limited, right? People think that it's limited. It's not limited to people that are in the military or go through bombs and things like that. There's bombs in our lives that can trigger the same thing. And what you said is so important, and I want everybody to hear it again, is that make this normal. Make this conversation normal, because it is in that talking. It is in those things that, like you said, maybe those parents just don't know their kids enough because they're not talking. That is the hard thing. You see it all the time. I fostered for 4 years. You see it all the time.
That's another conversation because I made the comment earlier and I caught myself after I made the comment. We need to normalize these conversations at the dinner table. We don't even eat dinner together anymore.
That is so true. How often do we even sit at the table and eat dinner together?
you know, and you start talking about parents communicating with their children, I guarantee you probably 90% of the time it's them sending a text while their kids are upstairs playing video games. Normal conversations.
So I've kind of like this visualization dream for the You're Not Broken book. And it goes something like this. Family takes a road trip. Okay. You got mom and dad in the front seat, got kids in the back seat, and the kids have the book You're Not Broken in their hands. The parents are playing the audio book on the radio, on the speakers. As the book is being played and as the kids are following along in the actual book, the parents see a look in one of their kids' eyes when something is being talked about. They realize we should just go ahead and stop the audio right now. Pause. You know what, Tom? I saw, kind of had a little look there, is what this was just talking about. Does that mean anything to you? Is that something that you feel sometimes, or maybe someone else, a friend or something, that's something that they're going through? It's starting a dialogue that never would have occurred if it wasn't for them taking the time to read this book and read it together where they could have this impact. If that could occur in families across the world, I think that children would have a much better childhood. They'd feel more supported going into adulthood, and they'd have less mental health problems as an adult. I 100% truly believe in that.
That is so good. I believe that that could happen, How many times? Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing about this whole PTSD
Mhm.
thing? It's kind of on my mind. You know, Post traumatic stress disorder, right? I speak at a lot of hospitals and I see a lot of young adults. And I say young adults, let's just say under the age of 30, that are struggling with anxiety, depression, alcoholism, addiction to a variety of substances. And me being in the insurance industry for 30 years, I like to think of myself as a good listener, right? Being in sales for 30 years. So I just sit back and listen to the stories. And I always ask, when did it all start? And I will tell you, more than 75% of the time, it's, well, my parents got a divorce when I was 12 years old. Or my parents got a divorce when I was 9 years old. Something as simple is your parents getting a divorce. And again, the divorce rate in this country is in the low 50s, 51, 52%, could lead to PTSD, lying mental health, and addictive issues for these individuals when they become young adults. I see it all day long. And the book talks about this stuff.
Oh, good. Everyone should get your book. That is so true. The last A in Aloha is acute awareness. And we talked a lot about the awareness that we have. Awareness is the first stage of your strength threshold framework. How can someone identify where they are on that strength continuum?
I think it really boils down to where your follow through is at. I mean, is making better choices something that you plan on doing or something that you are doing? So it really just, trying to get more consistent with the things that they should be doing. That will tell them, are they just, existing? Are they just strong enough to just get through a day and say, man, that was a rough day, but I survived it? Or are they saying, that was a rough day, but I actually learned something through the experience today. I actually feel like I was prepared to handle what happened to me today. It really is a mindset thing, and it kind of really tells you where you're at in your process. Are you someone who planned on dealing with it better and then fell short, or were you prepared?
One
Good.
thing I would add is
Preparation
that,
is always key.
yeah, honesty. Brutal
Brutal
honesty.
honesty.
Because
Yes.
sometimes the brain plays tricks on you. I mean, it does. The disease of addiction. Like with me, like I was prescribed pain pills as a result of a neck and back issue. So when I was going to the streets to buy opiate pain medication, in my mind, I'm like, well, I have a medical condition. I'm getting a prescription from a doctor, so I'm really not doing anything wrong. Well, I was doing something wrong. Okay. Your brain is always going to justify your actions. Okay. But I think like journaling or writing things down and putting it on paper and really doing a self analysis is absolutely key. Like even like when I talk to like individuals at the behavioral health center that I work at during the week, I'm like, you have to be brutally honest with the individuals that you work with, including the therapist. No bits and pieces. No just part of the story. And I say that because that was who I was. I never got the help that I needed or the support that I needed until I was brutally honest with myself. And then I was able to actually build myself back up. And I just think that's so important. Open, honesty, transparency, being brutally honest with yourself.
And if you feel like you might suffer from, that delusion of grandeur kind of ideology of where you're at, we actually have a diagnostic for that. And, we can send that to you, and you can put it like in the show notes and stuff. And
That
so
would be
people can
great.
actually, yeah, so people can actually go through that, and it will help them realize kind of where they are at. And so they're not even have to be necessarily honest with themselves, other than being honest in what they put as answers going through the diagnostic. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I guess that is where I'm at.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's
Because
so
that is
important.
true. That brutal honesty. I love that. Because people make excuses, right?
But it's so important because, if I had this diagnostic with the anxiety I was feeling and the panic attacks I was feeling, okay, even before the drinking picked up, what it put, what it could have prevented a lot of chaos in my life. But because there was no tool like this available, at least as far as I know, it wasn't available, okay, and I kept everything on the inside and I wasn't honest with myself, look at the disruption that it caused. We don't want people to go down that path. We want people to identify, create some structure, go ahead, and be the best version of themselves, the most productive person themselves, and live the life that they dream of.
That is so incredible. If someone was listening today and they feel overwhelmed by the pressure they're carrying, what do you want them to remember after, everything? What do you want them to remember about their strength and their capacity to grow? 'Cause sometimes people feel like I don't have it.
I mean, just if everything feels heavy right now, it's probably not because you're weak. It's just because as you said before, you're trying to carry too much without the right support around you. And most people don't need more pressure. They got plenty of that, but they do need a better way to handle what they're already dealing with. So, I mean, instead of asking yourself what's wrong, I mean, take a step back and ask what would actually help you move forward from where you're at right here, right now. And you don't need to fix everything at once. You just need a different next step and something that you can actually follow through on.
So good. So important. Thank you so much for all of this, for everything that you have spoken about. And I know that your books, it's already helping people, but I know that it will continue to help more people. I am so glad that you're led by God to do what you're doing and to serve the people that you're serving, because it is so needed in this world. So thank you both so much for joining us today and sharing your insights and the powerful message behind Suffer to Tougher. I love the reminder that strength is not about pretending everything is fine or endlessly pushing through the pressure, because real strength is built with awareness, expansion, support, and intentional growing. So to everyone who's listening, if today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or gave you a new perspective on your own capacity, I encourage you to contact Kelsey and Marc and learn more about their work. Before we close out, is there anything else you want the audience to hear?
I mean, the only thing I would say is we obviously have a website, suffertotougher.org. So if any of this resonates with you, if you're interested in the book or you have questions or what have you, you can go to that website and reach out to both Kelsey and myself. Outside of that, next time you have us, we want to be in Hawaii.
What he said.
Definitely. I will make sure. Now, actually, since you said that, I was planning a conference. I wanted to do one within the next 2 years, probably. I have so many trips planned that I'm like telling my husband, stop planning trips so that I can have this stuff happening. But I do want to have one here, because not only that it is a beautiful place, but I know for a fact that anyone who comes here and they speak, it's now a tax write-off. So we'll be
Well,
doing both
keep
of
us on
us
your
a
keep us on.
favor.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. Thank you, Marc. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you for this important message. Until next time, God's blessings always, and ahui ho. Aloha, everyone.
Thank you for joining us here on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. Before leaving, please hit that subscribe button. God's blessings always, and ahui ho.